A while ago, PNSO released their Borealopelta, followed soon by a Sauropelta, two amazing nodosaurids. I was very excited to see what ankylosaurs they'd do next, but I quickly forgot about it when we had a string of ceratopsians and then theropods. So it was a nice surprise when PNSO announced yet another ankylosaur, and even more so, an ankylosaurid. And this rather unusual looking ankylosaurid is Bart, the Pinacosaurus. Now, Pinacosaurus is an ankylosaur from China and Mongolia, and one we don't hear of too often. It's rather flattish, low-slung, and lighter built than you might be used to seeing in an ankylosaur. Though it still sports, and I use the word sports very loosely, the typical large gut of the family, with which to ferment its food. Pinacosaurus is estimated to have been 5 meters or 16 feet long. So at a length of 17 centimeters or 6.7 inches, this model is about 1/30th scale. The most striking thing is surprisingly not the armor, but the color. Now interestingly, a viewer recently commented that the brown rust red that PNSO seems to favor is starting to get a little bit monotonous. So if you were to hear that this new model also has rust brown, your reflex might very well be Well, it would seem that PNSO was reading that post too, and very carefully, because fortunately, there's nothing boring about this color scheme. This is clearly based on the extant tawny devil, with its reticulated browns and tans. Now, even the color of the head and the horns, and this stripe of white here, seems to borrow much inspiration from that color scheme. I do believe that this is the first time PNSO has borrowed so extensively from an extant animal in terms of the color scheme. Of course, we know that the beasts of the Mesozoic series already does that. Very nicely, I might add. So this is a model with a very striking appearance that instantly stands out from the other ankylosaur models you might have. As seems to be the trend with PNSO recently, the promised colours are almost fully realised in the model, but here I have a few disappointments. First, in the images, you can see the very dark shades of brown on the tail, and in these two sections, they lent a lot of richness and depth to the colour, which are now gone. Second, the osteoderms are missing some of that dry brushing, which would have brought out more detail. And finally, the boundaries of these brown patches don't extend as far to the edges as you can see in the release images. And you can see how visually that effect is a little diminished. Now, of course, what bothers you depends on what attracted you in the first place. And for me, I just love reticulated patterns, and so I am a little bit hard-hit. Now that said, elsewhere, the paint is really nice and does bring out lots of detail, such as in these fringe osteodermal spikes. You can see how nicely faded the colour is, and also the little cracks are so suggestive of living tissue, brought out by a very nice paint job. And I think you can see here just how, despite my nitpicking, how beautiful the coloration really is. Just look at this gorgeous blend of colors. Such vivid coloration that I haven't seen on any other PNSO. Now, ankylosaurs may look the same, but they do have cranial ornamentation that are species specific. For example, there are of course the horns, but also what Dr. William Blowes coined caputagulae in 2001, which are these flat polygonal pieces you'll see in the head and face. The singular caputagulum, meaning skull tile. I probably really butchered those pronunciations. And interestingly, Pinacosaurus means plank lizard, referring to the rectangular flat caputagulae covering its head. The number and distribution of these caputagulae are distinct across species. Pinacosaurus, according to Arbor, has frontonasal cranial ornamentation that's not divided into capitulagulae, as you can see comparing the snout between Pinacosaurus on the left and Tarchia on the right. And here we do see that in this model. The quadratojugal horn is large, but the squamosal horns are a bit smaller, especially compared to what you might see on Euoplocephalus or Sycania. The adults have skulls that are longer than wide, all this of which is reflected in this model, so big plus signs to PNSO here. As for the armour, ossification began from the neck and then progressed down to the tail as the animal matured. So as everything here is nicely ossified, we can surmise that this is an adult. Unfortunately, even though we have many specimens of Pinacosaurus, most are juveniles, and since ossification is not complete, we don't know what the final configuration of osteoderms might be. But Arbor and Curry in 2013 suggested that a specimen previously attributed to Sycania actually belonged to Pinacosaurus, and the model seems to be based on that. If so, it's very accurate to that reconstruction. We can see the armour with what looks like two cervical half rings, a few keel osteoderms, the patterning of the spiked osteoderms fringing the rear corners and down the tail, and even the double club appearance at the end of the tail. All this, as you can see, very close to the design in the diagram. Apparently, there was no continuous sacral shield, as is reflected again in this model. And everything else is filled in a reasonable way based on what we've seen in other ankylosaurs. So all in all, I'm very satisfied with the appearance of this Pinacosaurus. I think that this is as close as you can get to what we do know from the science. So let's have another pass of the detail. And there, as you can see, these really would have been brought out with the dry brushing that you see in the product images. And all the way down. Then on the side, you can just see that this ankylosaurid is fringed with osteoderms and spikes. And underneath that chainmail appearance we've seen and loved in other PNSO dinosaurs. And I really like the suggestion of loose flabby skin here and also under the neck. In Pinacosaurus, the forelimbs actually got more robust with age relative to the rest of the skeleton, but not the hind limbs, suggesting that the arms did most of the weight bearing. And as you can see, the arms here look pretty solid alright, and they're also adorned with these beautiful badass scutes throughout the whole arm, front, side and back. And you can see that's really carrying on the Tawny Devil idea further. The metacarpals or the hand bones seen from the top form a tight arch, suggesting they were held vertically like column for support, just like in sauropods. Now I can't see that as clearly here, but it does look like it's not completely plantigrade, so perhaps it's just hard to see with all the external tissue. The hand is pentadectical, and yup, we count 5 fingers. The feet are tridectical with 3 toes, as you can see. The claws were shaped like hooves, and I do imagine I can see that, though it's very small to make out. Pinacosaurus is a lightly built, medium-sized ankylosaur, and even the club was relatively light compared to, say, of course, Ankylosaurus. Why? Probably because contemporaneous predators were small, such as Velociraptor. There were no mega predators, and so accordingly, Pinacosaurus was lighter built to maximize agility and efficiency of defense with a smaller and faster wielded club, and not wasting energy carrying more club and armor than necessary for the job. Now here's how he compares to the other PNSO ankylosaurs. We have here the Borealopelta, the Sauropelta, and the ankylosaurus, all of which I estimate to be around 1 to 36 scale. So as I said, Pinacosaurus being about 1 to 30th scale, it's on a larger scale. But if I bring in my dense dinosaurs, 1 to 29th scale ankylosaurus, just so you have another ankylosaurid of about the same scale for comparison, you can really appreciate the size difference. And once again, you can see just how much he stands out from the crowd because of that visually striking coloration. So that's the Pinacosaurus from PNSO, a genus not often depicted, quite unique, and with all its interesting characteristics demonstrated so nicely in this model. And it's sure to stand out in any crowded collection due to a color scheme that just shouts for attention and likely to get it. Now, I'm really happy to have a species I've never owned. I should say genus. Now, PNSO really keeps giving us better and better figures, and it's almost an event each week to see what new figure it's going to announce. On the one hand, the last announcements are expected to be around February before they take a break, and I'll be sorry not to look forward to see which dinosaur will be revealed next. But on the other hand, I think our wallets could all welcome the break. And perhaps more importantly, I think it's nice to get a breather, to get some time to really look over again all the PNSO models we've recently got on this wave, to take the time to admire and appreciate what we have gotten so far. Alright, so I'm signing off. You guys have a fantastic week ahead, and I'll be back soon with another video.